All right, there's nobody online, but we will go ahead and get started with, slipping over to look at the agenda. Public comment, and we have some special guests here, but I don't know that we thank you. We have other members of the public here, but just making sure that I'm not wrong. Anybody? No. Okay, so then we will move into our mission review, and I will just pass this over to Marcus and have you read it for us this
All right.
time.
I felt like this was going to happen today.
You almost didn't come, maybe, but now you're here.
All right. Looks like we're good. All right. So our mission is to offer advice to the St. Albans Police Department for successful implementation of the 21st century policing strategies and to assist the police department in following the established roadmap as amended by the City Council.
Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, we actually have some meeting minutes. Much obliged to Kristen Smith. I'll give her a shout out, who's been on the prowl for minutes for us. We still have some gaps, but at the very least, we are able to look at September's of 2022, December's of 2022, February, March, and April's of 2023. So they were all in our packet, so hopefully folks had a chance to take a peek at them. So are there any questions or concerns about the minutes at all before we put a motion out there? Because I would like to do them in a batch if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll just put on the record, there were two things that I feel like they were slightly taken out of context the way that I said them. I just didn't want it to be confusing. So one of them was about with the grant that the police department applied for. It said that I had said it was a quick turnaround for the grant. It was a quick turnaround for applying for the grant. There's a lengthy process to wait for that. So I just wanted to make sure it didn't sound unclear. And I feel like there was one other thing that was said. Okay, look into the Madden report. I know that there were two. One was specific to the turnaround time of the grant.
Are you looking for us to make that change, or did you just want to?
Just wanted to say it for the record,
okay.
so it wasn't. Oh, and the other thing was the ComStat meetings. That it described the ComStat meetings as it sounded like being open to the public too, and that's not the case. It's open for specific community partnerships. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear too. Otherwise, I don't think that we need to make any major changes. Just didn't want to give an impression of something that wasn't accurate on both of those.
Okay. Oh, good catches. All right, so with those suggested changes on the record, I would be looking for a motion for all of the minutes in this month's packet to be on the table.
I make a motion to approve all the minutes. I so order.
Motion is
So it's
ready.
your name.
Winnie Wilkerson.
Okay.
And then I'll second it.
Okay. Any additional discussion, suggestions, comments, or changes to the minutes? All right, hearing none, we'll look for all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes pass as they lay. Thank you all very much. It's very exciting to get that bit of business done. Okay, now we will move on to, we've got some special guests with us tonight. We have some folks from Restorative Justice and some additional members of the SAPD team here with us tonight. We're very grateful to have you all here to talk to a little bit about restorative justice, community youth, and how we're interfacing. And just for a quick backdrop on this, we've been talking about that in this meeting as it was raised as one of the areas of concern that we wanted to focus on as a police advisory board. And just to put it in context for those of you that are new to us, we're not an accountability board. We can't actually tell anybody what to do. Directives come from City Council, but City Council has appointed us to look at data, to interface with Chief and the SAP team and city leadership to make sure that we're hitting those roadmap. Hitting those. The roadmap, yeah. Yeah, oh my gosh, it's gonna be one of those nights. That we're meeting the things laid out for us in the 21st century roadmap, and that we're helping SAPD be successful in that work. So our goal, I think, is to really understand what's happening, and then what we can do, what we can advocate for through Dominic Cloud, the city manager, and city council that would be of assistance in this area of focus. So with that, I will welcome Harmony Bourgeois,
Yes.
Lisa Pepe, and Lieutenant Talley to our table today. And I will hand it over to you, Harmony.
Yeah, hi. So Harmony Bourgeois, I'm the Executive Director of Restorative Justice. I know most of you here, a couple of you know, so hello. So really just an overview of restorative justice. We have several programs that we get funding. I'll keep it quick. We get funding from the Attorney General's office. We get funding from the Department of Corrections. We get funding from DCF. And we get funding from a VOCA grant, which is a small grant that gives us a part-time victim advocate. AGO grant funds court diversion, pretrial services, Tamarack program. I did bring a brochure that kind of outlines what all those are for you to kind of have something tangible to take away with you, should you be interested. DOC funds our reparative panels. We have a transitional housing bed. We have 10 beds for gentlemen coming out of incarceration. And they also fund a community caseload of Michelle does a great job with finding housing for homeless individuals. And then Becca works on vocational jobs for people under supervision, basically. And then we recently have been working with the police department around a pre-charge, which currently falls under DOC. That might change in the future, but pre-charge would give police discretion to refer lower level offenses to restorative justice rather than directly to the state's attorney. So that's like a work in progress. We've created an MOU around that, though it's not officially signed by Mr. Leroy just yet, though he has gone through it and made his edits. And really, we're just waiting on him, I guess, for that. But we're excited to get that started. We're going to open that slowly because we haven't historically done that at our office. So I don't necessarily have a ton of staffing or bandwidth for that, but we are excited to explore that avenue. So. Yeah, and I will hand it over to Lisa. Lisa works directly with our youth, so I know this was, your hope was to focus more around youth work.
Yes.
So Lisa is boots on the ground, work all day with youth, so.
Thanks, Harmony. So I'm Lisa Pepe, I'm the Youth Services Coordinator. I'm going to talk today about some classes, so I'm going to just hand this around so people can read along if they'd like. So our restorative processes engage youth in creating restorative contracts, and those are guided by 4 domains. Those domains are making sure the impact of the event is understood, making amends to the people who need it, creating a positive connection with the community, and learning ways to avoid causing future harm or victimization. So in this brochure, we have some skills classes that we offer. So the ones I'm going to talk about are kind of our top skills classes. It's not all of our skills classes. So the first one is Driving My Mind and Body. The skills class is designed to assist youth in thinking about how our thoughts and feelings lead to our actions and consequences when faced with a risky situation. We also look at the development of the adolescent brain and discuss what we call the amygdala hijack, which is the undeveloped brain's way of handling a situation with emotions versus being able to engage our prefrontal cortex to think in a more logical way. This class also explores habits and ways to break them, as well as analyzes different basic skills. We then wrap this class up with a review and a bit of self-care work. The next one I want to focus on is owning my decisions. This class begins by looking at something the youth would like to change about the way they're living their lives. So this could be something that they feel is affecting their life, or something that they're told they need to work on at home, school, etc. We explore the stages of change framework, which includes pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. We then observe an example of a decisional balance matrix, which is also known as a cost-benefit analysis of both making a change and not making a change. We close this class by creating a decisional balance matrix with whatever the youth is considering changing, and we assess it together to decide whether they think it's time to make a change or not. The next class is Making Change Real. This class follows two frameworks for making a positive change. So we first explore the WOOP framework, which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan, as well as the SMART framework, which stands for Specific, Measurable, Achievable, Relevant, and Time Measured. We explore changes using both frameworks in an effort to come to a consensus on which one fits the specific need of each goal. One that's a big hit right now and that we're using a lot is My Online Life. So this is FGI RJC's well-known internet safety course. We explore different ways we use the internet, discuss what information is and is not safe to share, learn about fraud, question who is behind the avatar, and discuss human trafficking. I do want to say we work with ages 10 through 22, so those conversations about human trafficking are kind of catered to the different ages and developmental levels. This class is followed by Linda Cabot's curriculum called I Am Little Red. The curriculum explores how to identify predators, keep ourselves safe, and it discusses human trafficking at the level of an 11 to 14-year-old child. Healthy relationships. This class explores the different types of relationships we experience throughout life. It looks at indicators of unhealthy relationships, analyzes healthy communication tips, and taking appropriate preventative measures before engaging in a relationship. Another big one that we're looking at right now, especially with the vaping that's happening all over the place, is substance awareness. This class explores the difference between substance use, abuse, and dependence. It covers the risks of alcohol use, vaping, tobacco use, and cannabis. This class also explores harm reduction while encouraging abstinence from substances. We also offer classes called Financial Steps to Independence. So those are around budgeting. True, so that's showing up as your best self. Building mindfulness, just what it sounds like. Driving with the full brain, that was one that a couple kiddos asked me if I could create a class for them in preparation for getting their permit. So this is more around, what emotionally and physically can distract you when you're driving. A call to men. So all the classes, aside from I Am Little Red and a call to men curriculums, have been created by staff at FGI RJC. And then if you look at the back, there's my little shameless plug for volunteers if you're interested.
And I will say, there's a variety of ways we can get referrals, right? So some of our referrals come from the state's attorney's office, some referrals come from probation and parole, some referrals come from the police department, perhaps. Anything else you can think of? DCF. And we do hold restorative panels too. So it's not just classes, there's restorative panels that people come to. We invite affected parties to participate in all of our panels. They can choose to or not to. It's definitely their choice. And in those panels, we touch on, same thing Lisa kind of mentioned, the 4 points of make sure the full impact of the event is understood, make amends to people who need it, create a positive connection with the community, and learning about ways not to reoffend. So it's not just skills classes, we do other things as well to kind of address the situation.
We
depending
also,
on what that would be.
we also offer restorative circles because panels sometimes aren't the best option for the kiddos. So we look at, a lot of the times this happens when somebody in the family is a victim or the affected party. We'll look at doing a restorative circle together, which we've done some pretty rigorous trainings on. So. Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
Are there any questions, or, I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to speak, yeah.
What percentage of, the population you serve are homeless?
Ooh, that's a great question. I wish Michelle were here for that. I know Michelle has a high caseload. We try to cap her at about 30 people. So that's a community caseload, not counting the 10 guys she works with in our transitional housing. So I couldn't give you an exact percentage, but we try to cap her at 30, if that's helpful.
I have a couple of questions, but Lieutenant Talley, I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add before.
The pre-charge, I was going to ask specifically if there was anything you wanted to talk. We've been working in collaboration around that, so I didn't know.
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of modeled off from what Chippy County is already doing. It's something that we've been trying to do for years, and we just have not had the authority or the go-ahead from the state's attorneys to be able to do it. It's one of those we realize that, okay, what we're doing is not working. So to try to bypass the court system and getting right to Harmony and her crew is our goal. So the things that we looked at real quick were some of the minor things on the scale of everything else. There's the retail thefts, if they're under $300, unlawful mischief, which is vandalism, under $500, petty larceny thefts, under $500, some disorderly conduct to include phone and electronic means, an LSA if there's no injury or anything like that.
What does that say?
Oh, sorry, leaving the scene of an accident.
Oh.
So if it was just something minor, if it's more than $3,000 damage or there's injuries, no, you would say you wanted to qualify here. Or at least we're saying we're gonna give the state's attorney the first crack at it to decide where it's gonna go. Trespassing, some theft of services, maybe some other stuff that we find later on. We didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves into these ways. So that's what we're starting at, small, because we could easily fill, double their staff, and they would still need more people with what we have just on those little things. I know the chief last year shared some of the stats, and
So ballpark, how many cases?
if I took just
Just those cases, just those
kids?
charges. What are we looking at? It's like the liquor.
just
This
juveniles,
is just chicken scratch, by the way,
Yep.
real quick.
50 of them were 50 out of 345 cases, and 27 of the 50 were of the same
So
person.
that's 50 arrests, 50 that could have been arrested out of 340 cases.
But 27 of them were the same
Same.
offender.
So if you take that same offender who was just not learning or getting whatever you want to say,
The help.
they need,
Yeah.
The help.
what they need from the court system, maybe making it there, maybe it's not, it's just not, and the victims are so many victims.
Yeah.
And the same question I have for you, within the statistics that you just shared, how many of them are homeless?
I do not know that.
I don't know off the top of my head, though, we dealt with a lot of juvenile homeless. That doesn't mean they're not being currently housed through some funding that's going to end soon, though, which may in fact make them homeless at that point. But right now, we're not dealing with a lot of actual outside homeless. We're dealing with homeless that are being funded other ways right now. That's going to come to an end here this summer, in June and July.
But there's a lot of homeless people who are living within St. Albans in some isolated situation. And one of the problems that I'm constantly hearing is about stop and frisk. And I'm like, I don't know. And so some don't have ID, never had an ID. One person offended when they were young, the welfare system, and so they were back from the welfare system when they were 21, now they're 49, did their time in jail and out and can't get no help.
So Winnie, you brought that up last time
Yeah.
you were here, and so it is an agenda item a little later. Not that I don't think it's totally relevant here, but I want to make sure that we're being
I can
mindful.
get into that more.
Yeah. So I did let Chief know that conversation
Okay.
happened. So I think we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more
Okay.
when we get to that on the agenda, because I know that that is an important point and a concern. I don't know how much it's impacting the youth group per se, and I know, we've talked about some of the repeat folks. It's not that they're homeless as I understand it, but rather they come from a home where maybe there isn't a lot of accountability support or, parental guidance that you might expect. And that can happen whether you're in a home or not in a home, right? So my one question, and then you touched on it a little bit, not knowing Chittenden's model. If you refer them after you've made an arrest for a crime, does that make it a mandatory thing without having to go through the court, or can the youth or the person still say no thank you?
So, the way we have it set up is our officers are going to create the case as if they are actually charging the juvenile and sending them to court, or charging the person and sending them to court. We're giving them a piece of paper, say, hey, you've been referred to go see restorative justice, go here, you have to do this within 7 days. And then the fail-safe from that is the state's attorneys get to review the case and they'll make the decision, no, because ultimately they have to say, no, this is not a good case for restorative, send it back to us, they're going to court on the date that was originally scheduled 2 months down the road. Or how it's supposed to work is they're supposed to reach back or collaborate with them, restorative say, yes, this juvenile is still engaged, so we don't need to go to court, or did not get engaged, so go to court on the date that was put on the citation.
But the onus is on the juvenile.
Yes.
They have to follow within 7 days
Yeah.
and then participate through the program, which they can answer much better how it goes.
Correct. I mean, if they don't participate, we're, under obligation to send them back just like we would through
Okay.
the state's attorney's office.
Yeah.
And then the state's attorney would then choose to prosecute or not.
So whether it's a direct referral is immaterial in that
Yes.
process. Okay.
So the process is similar to like the pre-trials in the sense of the Tamarack, is it similar to the adult program in a sense of like them showing up or not showing up and being sent back to court? Is it like that same ideology?
It's the same ideology, only that the referral isn't coming from the state's attorney, it's coming from the police department, so.
Do you guys get referrals from Spectrum by chance?
No.
No. Just curious about that.
I did want to say, and this kind of, I'm backtracking a little bit, but when she spoke about the homelessness, I wanted to make sure to just clarify that we aren't dealing with juvenile homelessness. We work with adults. So Michelle has a community caseload of adults. And I will just say quickly that when the hotel end, the end of this month and then the following month, we have a ton of vouchers, but we cannot find apartments to fill those vouchers.
That's where your
That's-
question
So-
becomes much more relevant.
I just wanted to put that out there to kind of just piggyback on what she was saying, really quick. But it wasn't about youth. Specifically, we don't work with youth in homelessness. We work with people under supervision.
Hold please. Thanks. Another one's gonna go by in 30 seconds, so I don't bother. So do you have I don't want to say success or failure, that doesn't feel like right, but just from a data standpoint, where you've had individuals, particularly youth, who've gone through this program and have not reoffended and have gone on to find success, and
Absolutely.
do you know what those statistics are compared to those who do go back out, unfortunately, and maybe reoffend?
I don't have an exact number. I have an idea, but I don't want to speak without
Sure.
looking
Got it.
first. But we have found a lot of success in these programs. A lot of people that are referred to us as at risk. So they're not adjudicated for any sort of crime. Those are the ones that I'll usually see maybe a couple times, do some classes, and then we won't see them again. And then even the ones that are adjudicated, often you don't see them again. I've gotten, emails and stuff from them saying, Lisa, I'm doing great since we finished the program. And besides that, I think just in general, we have a very successful, there's a high rate of success with our program.
I will say too that success, I don't know about recidivism, but we have about an 80% success rate of people completing the program, going through and completing successfully. I will look up recidivism. I'm sure that data is somewhere. But success can look like different things to different people, right? So small steps in success, whereas someone at one point in their lives may have went and just, made terrible choices, whereas after coming and working with us, they took a breath, they calmed down, they walked away from the situation. So to us, like, success looks different in different ways,
Sure,
I guess.
of course. I think recidivism was more where I was going with it.
Recidivism,
Yeah, just really understanding if it's still doing the same thing over and over again and banging our heads against the wall, or is there some, whatever that looks like to a person, are we seeing results, I guess is a better way to say that.
I think there is a point too, when if that does happen and the state's attorney keeps referring the same person, we come to a point where we say, this doesn't feel like it's working for them, so, let's try something else, or the state's attorney needs to try something else.
And I do have the pleasure of every quarter, part of the narrative for our quarterly report for Balanced and Restorative Justice, I have the pleasure of writing a success story about a client. So I get to do that 4 times a year, which is great.
All right. What other questions does the committee have?
Just a huge thank you for your work.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I love when you mentioned doing like the restorative circles too, and just everything that you were reading and listing here. So critical for young individuals. I mean, I know you were community partners, so I already think highly of you. I know I'm biased, but if I try to remove that emotion of knowing you and knowing how good you are, and just looking at the product that you guys are doing in the community, it's so huge, so needed, because a lot of this is bubbled up with the idea that there's some challenges in the community for youth, and there's not a lot of solution and answers. So that's where Restorative Justice Center was brought up. We're really grateful you came to share about the program.
Oh, thank you
and
so
the
much.
stuff that you guys do, because I know you do a lot of good work, and I don't think that it's known to as many community members as they would probably like to, right? So I think trying to highlight you more in the near future so people can learn the work that you're doing is so valuable. So thank you for taking your time and coming after hours. And
Thank you.
Gosh, our pleasure. Thank you for having us. And I think prevention work, is key. So in youth in particular, if we can start working with youth before they get to that adult, and really it's about humanizing the experience, and kind of Lisa does a great job with her classes and working with all of that. So yeah, it really makes a huge difference.
So I guess one last not little question, it's going to be not that little when I say it, but what can we, as a committee advising city council, advising city leadership on this, what can we do for you to support this work? How can we help you? I hate question. Yeah, I know, so see? And if you don't know right now, that's okay. But I think we would really like to hear more, but also, we want to be able to use the platform we have as much as we can to advocate for this work, because at the end of the day, we want to support these guys in their work, and also the community and the interface, and trying to keep as many positive options out there as we can.
I think we've had really great collaboration with a lot of different community partners, and just keeping those collaborations going and keeping them healthy, I think, is the biggest thing.
And even I was just going to say, with the PD in particular, Chief Lamothe and Tally, they've been terrific since I took executive director probably 2 years ago. I mean, the collaboration has been great, so I've been super grateful for that. It's been great. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You got something?
Okay. Money, yeah.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
to the city council, to say, stop. I do, they need more funding, so the funding for them is very limited, they live on grants, just like everything
Yeah.
else. So the problem is like, the majority of the funding comes from St. Albans City because of where you're located.
Right.
So geographically, it's like Newsy and everything else, the outlying towns don't pay a lot of money because they don't house the project. The brick and mortar, and that is a downfall to this project, just like Newsy and everything else.
That's where I was gonna
I
go.
will
The chief
say-
stole my words. It's not, the stats may not all be St. Albans juveniles.
Right.
There are other communities,
Exactly.
or there are other communities are going to court and being sent to them, but
Yeah.
the other communities are not contributing to the overall budget for the restorative justice, or some, not at all.
Right.
So if other communities could see the benefit from this and bolster their budget so they can get more staff or provide more services to the youth, that would be, I think, something that's, could be not beneficial, but obviously beneficial, but something that
Yeah.
the board could help.
Necessary, but that's the same as Newsy. The same exact.
There must be a report that can be generated to show, like, let's say you've got the list of the individuals that you're serving and where they live. So if there's, 4 from Fairfield, there's 3 from Enos, or whatever it might be, then there would be a way to see where the referrals are coming from, so to speak, and then look at that. Because that makes sense too, right? Just because the organization is located in St. Albans, you serve not only Franklin, but Grand Isle County too, right?
Yes, yep.
So I think that's another important piece to mention, is that the population you're serving are not necessarily St. Albans residents. Some may be, but many may not be, right?
Right, and unfortunately, the data is tracking where the crime is committed, right? A
Oh.
lot of times, it's committed in St. Albans City,
The
because
hub.
where does everybody go, right?
right,
I mean,
right.
exactly, it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. I appreciate you both bringing that up around pre-charge in particular, because if and when, I say when because I believe it will, take off, we have no staff or funding for that. So I'm not sure what's gonna happen, but it's a reality that, funding, money matters, for sure.
Well, and Danielle Lindley is not with us tonight, but we heard her clearly say in the last meeting that the supports that would normally come from our designated agencies and our other community partners like Spectrum, like NCSS, they're out of staff. They don't have the supports in place to even, probably before we would get to a direct referral, right? Like the idea being that they provide the supports before someone gets to the point where they've had an interface with you and now they're coming over via referral. So we know we gotta catch the stream somewhere, right? So if this is a methodology that works in our current state, because unfortunately I don't think caseworkers and psychologists are going to fall out of the trees or to be delivered by manna. So we've got to think about it differently. So I do think that that's a really great point to bring up. We have certainly gone to them before with asking for funding, and in this case, we know we have an opportunity with at least one other community coming down the pipe pretty soon, and we need to probably work to advocate with Dom and the City Council to leverage our partners in the town for some of this work, because we know that we'll probably see that start to rise as time goes forward too. So great point, and yes, we will bring that forward whenever, someday I'll go to City Council and be able to talk about what we've talked about here, and so we'll make sure that that's on the list. So thank you.
I appreciate that. One more thing I will say is like volunteers. We could not do the work we do without our volunteers. So we always can use volunteers. We've been kind of talking to community partners to see even if they're interested in letting some of their staff volunteer to do some community service around the area on their time. People have been opening up, being really great about that, other community partners. So just, we literally couldn't do the work without the volunteers, and we always need them. Particularly COSA. I will put a plug for COSA. Circles of Support and Accountability is in dire need of volunteers right now. So I will leave these with you so you can all look them over, what each program is. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. My contact information is on the back, so happy to talk to anyone.
And I'll just accent that plug of the COSA volunteers. I've been a COSA volunteer. I think I'm going close to 9 or 10 years now as a COSA volunteer. It is one of the most rewarding ways I have ever spent my time. So valuable. So yeah, huge advocate for anybody interested in volunteering for COSA and sharing with organizations. I know that we share it too, you know, through the community partnership, through faith-based communities, and I think it's just continually reminding people that there's still that need, because sometimes if it's not heard about for a few months, then the thought is like, oh, well, they must have filled it, and that's not the case. So definitely a huge supporter. Those programs are so fantastic, and for the core members being supported, for some of them, I mean, they have just literally come out and said that they don't know that they would have not gone back to jail if it wasn't for the COSA team wrapping around them. So it's rewarding for both.
And the great thing about it too, I'll just finish up, I know you have a whole
No.
meeting to get through.
Yeah, you're fine.
But one last thing, it used to be mandatory, right, or required, a COSA. Coming out, if you're in our transitional house, you have to do a COSA. Now it's voluntary, which is really great because these people are actually saying, I want the support and help of community. So it makes it that much more, you know, meaningful if they actually want to be there. They're asking for it, so.
And I know you're about to exit, and I did notice that a community member joined us, so a little unusual, but Jen, if you're there, I don't know if you had any questions for these folks since they're special presenters and they're getting ready to leave. Okay. Well, wanted to give you the opportunity. Welcome. Always nice to see you. Okay.
One last thing, so.
Yeah, please, no.
While this is new and we're creating this, there's some things that we cannot do because it's by law. And I'll use the example of substance. So when we're talking about criminal charges here, and they're like, well, how come you sent somebody who stole something, but not somebody who was underage drinking? The law is, if they're 15 and younger, I don't send them to diversion or restorative. I have to send them to give them a criminal citation to go to court.
Really?
For which one?
16 to both.
Okay.
16 to 20 and get the ticket, and they get the chance to get out of the ticket. And if they are 21 or older for possession of marijuana, so it's kind of backwards. Possession of marijuana for somebody out in public for 21 or older is $200. 16 to 20 years old are $300. 15 and younger go to court.
And
There's
the
something
16
And so the 16
So-
to 20, I believe, would come to our
Yeah.
YSAS program, the
That's
youth
what we use
substance
substance.
awareness
Yeah.
program, so.
So as long as they complete that program, the ticket goes away. But if they don't complete the program, they let us know and they file a ticket with White River
Okay.
and so on. So there's something as small as that, you might not see us saying, hey, you gotta go see restorative justice because we can't. The law says I have to send it to court.
Yeah, and our youth substance awareness safety program is a completely different program than all of what we've been talking about, so,
Yes.
but that's housed with us also, so.
Yeah. I just didn't want to cross streams and think, well, we're doing this to pre-charge, how come we're sending these people to court?
Yeah.
That's great.
No, I
It's
appreciate
different.
you bringing that up because I think we have that conversation a lot about various things, right? Like why did the law enforcement make this decision? Well,
Sometimes you
because
die.
the law says that they have to, and unfortunately, sometimes it is what it is. So I'm grateful that you brought that up. Thank you. With that, anything else for these folks? Well, you're welcome to stay as long as you like, but please, we appreciate you being here and.
For a puppy, I did it.
Yes, please do that.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thanks so much.
See you guys.
I'll see you guys soon. I'll see you.
So with that,
I'd love to continue on and those.
Thank you.
yes, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye, thank you for telling, very appreciative. So just quickly, you talked a little bit about in the minutes, but SAPD grant activity, not that we're expecting there to be any motion, but we thought we'd just bring it up.
Yep, so the grants have been submitted, their deadline's like May 8th or whatever, 4th or 8th, they were submitted, we won't hear anything until September.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any questions on that? Good, easy peasy. Okay, so we sort of talked through, I think we got a little preview of the data, but one of the things, as we've looked into these areas of focus, we've asked for specific data that comes to us with a little more frequency, just so that we can stay on top of it as we continue to build our committee and our work. And one of the things that we asked for, particularly as it ties to our special guests who were just here, were some youth-specific data. I think is it youth arrest? What did we?
We had both, so,
Okay.
we ran 2022, we had 345 juvenile problems that covered everything from, that were arrest involved. Every call we had that was classified as juvenile complaint, which means it was, anybody under the age 18 and under. So I have, I broke it down to see of those 345 calls, 50 of them resulted in arrests, 14 of them were felony arrests, assaults, robberies, burglaries, burglary of occupied dwellings, you name it. So, but you have to remember, some of these are 18, so they're not exactly, I don't want you to think they're 11 years old, so.
Yeah.
But
So 18 are still
27
considered?
Yes.
Yes,
And
okay.
27 of them were the same person, so
Right.
Yeah.
they take that into account too. So 23 were different people, 27 they arrested one person.
Was that same person any of the felonies?
I don't know, I didn't break that out, but my guess is knowing that person, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And what is a felony? Just I was just thinking.
What is one? So it
shocked.
can be anything, so even shoplifting, anything over $900 can be a felony, so it doesn't take.
Okay.
Vandalism can be, it doesn't take much, $600, yeah, so you can get up there.
Okay.
I kind of broke down where these were, just to give an idea, so parking garage was 62 of the calls. The parks, Taylor Park, and Hope Park, together about 40 of the calls, so there's 100 right there, 345, just where you assume juveniles might contribute and cause some problems. So just because they were called there all the time doesn't mean they were violating a law, it just means somebody called because they didn't like what the kids are doing. They could be hanging out on the roof and we were called there because kids are hanging on the roof. Often we're called there because they're dangling legs over the side, that's a call. People don't like the way it looks, and I agree 100%. So we're called there, or they're in fact vandalizing something, using the roof as an example of the parking garage.
Yeah.
So we get a call, it generates a case number, it doesn't mean anything happened to them, it just means we might have gone and ushered them off the roof of the parking garage. Or they could be in fact doing something that's illegal, but that's just an example of how a case number gets generated and why the parking garage gets so many calls. It's kind of a magnet.
So looking at some of that data of those, I know you're not going to know this specifically, but is your sense that some of those would have been good candidates for
Yeah, absolutely.
this program?
So, for example, we have one child, and I say child, he's 11. We sat down, the city was upset, getting real upset, because he did actually vandalize, there's 11 cases where he did vandalism to the parking garage alone. It was in the area of $25,000 damage. And the state attorney dropped all the charges. So that's where we're like, we have to do something with this child, because he literally told the judge, I'm not going to the rec center, I'm not working with P.E.G to try to get him something to do, like, just take up his time. He refused to do anything that the court had put down on him. So they're like, all right, we gotta come up with something different. And his parents are not involved in his life. He lives with his grandparents, which is fine, but she has been to our PD multiple times saying, I have zero influence or control on this child. And everybody's kind of banging their head, but it's weekly. And so with restorative justice, we're hoping just to be able to slide that to them, let them take a shot at somebody like him. So he's not a bad kid, he's just bored out of his skull and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And everybody has tried to influence him again, but things have been thrown out like, we'll put you in rec center, we'll get you taught to therefore just get programs that won't cost you anything. Refuses. So we gotta come up with something different. So we're hoping somebody like restorative justice will come up with an idea. But the last case is really where the tipping point. They brought all the cases forward and they didn't do it. They, of course, they were not touching it, it's too young. And I kind of get that too.
Yeah.
So
Was he referred to get mental health?
he will not go willingly to MTSS. He won't speak with them. Sam has talked to him multiple times, but he will literally swear up and down at her, sue and get out of her effing face. And so, but we've dealt with him.
What does he want? What does he?
Just be left alone. He's, as he puts it, he's old enough to be on his own.
Wow, 11 years old.
Yeah, so.
He's probably been on his own.
That probably
Right,
is, right.
Yeah, so you'd all recognize him if I showed him to you. He's out, I mean, all hours, day and night. So, he's been in, through DCF, he's been through everything, so. But anyway, so we're hoping if we put him in this direction, maybe this will be the avenue that you can find something that hooks and gets him, something that he's interested in.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So, because again, you can have a conversation with him, absolutely fine, unless you catch him doing something that's totally different, then he's not the same person. Especially if he has a group of friends.
Wow.
11 years old.
Yeah, very young.
27 comes out.
But anyway, he is not the one with 27 charges, so.
Oh, he is not the
he
one.
is not.
Oh, sorry.
He does some high numbers too, but he's not the 27.
Okay. But obviously it is, that just points even more to the direction that there are just some people who need some key support in our community, particularly who are under the age of 21 or 18, whatever that age is. So, you know, we gotta start to figure that out as a community.
So I tell you what, the city, did they hire somebody just for the parking garage now? There's somebody that's in there all day.
Yeah.
And it's pushed, we have almost no problems there until the middle of the night, and our numbers are low. But we're not sure where that pushed the issue.
Right.
And we'll find out when school gets out.
I mean,
So what does the person
So,
do in the
yeah.
parking
Just
garage?
walks through there, it just says, hey, you can't
walks
loiter
through
here,
there.
that's it, simply, it's not a police officer, just says, hey, you can't loiter here, that's as simple as that, there's
Huh.
been, a lot, there's been, I don't think there's been no vandalism while they're there, but keeps people feel a little better about walking through and not having people just kinda hanging in there, so.
which I, you know, can appreciate, but the inner root cause lover
Yes.
inside me said that's not,
So,
to me, that's not the place where maybe that money needed to be spent, right? And I'll say that on public record, and I would say it out loud at city council too. That's solving one part of the problem and
yeah.
just creating the stream
Not-
to
it's
split
not gonna have the
elsewhere.
core
There's a
problem,
farther downstream problem, or upstream, however you want to look at it, that we probably need to address as a community, and it's just figuring out where that is. Not that our committee necessarily can solve all of those woes, but you know, I think we certainly can say to city council, like, the data is saying that this is a real issue, and we know that the groups that would normally we rely on are struggling in this space right now too. So how do we look differently at this? What can we do?
I think that's a challenge in a way when I hear like the example of the young man who's been offered every activity at no charge, therefore it removes the barrier of having to pay for the rec center, removes the barrier of having nothing to do, and sometimes it's just that's not the answer. So
Right.
that's where it's like, what is, you know, the answer for somebody struggling with interest in doing anything that's pro-social and healthy?
But I hear whatever that money is for the person walking through the parking garage, which is great that we've made that a nicer space and a safer space, and it's limited the number of calls during the day. But could that money have been spent on
Yeah, I mean-
something like restorative justice, right? Like, did we, you know, I don't know. I don't know that that's the answer, but that's just what that's where my gut goes.
Yeah, and I agree with you too. For the most part, the only piece that I can see is slightly a little bit of prevention, because if it cost over 25 grand to fix something in that garage because of the vandalism,
True.
then it's almost like you're
and it's not
preventing.
just the kids, that's.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, but I still agree too.
Yeah.
It's kind of a catch-22, right? Because I see prevention happening, that's gonna save money down the road because there's
Right.
less damage. But then you're also making a totally accurate point that, okay, there's
Probably
still
just
a
a-
problem, so let's, where did it go,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, 'cause that, now that's going to be maybe personal property, and people aren't gonna have the resources to fix.
Right, that's the
The
hard
things
thing, is
that they
figuring
need,
out
yeah.
where they move to.
Well, I think that's, and that data was just 2022
Yeah.
data, and do you have any 2023 data?
No, for the juvenile side, no, not at all. No, we have it, but I have not looked into it.
Yeah, is that something that we could see for like a 6 months worth of data for them?
I can tell you, it's a lot less, from at least that area,
Okay.
big time less.
Yeah,
And it will be less for now because school's been in session since the beginning of this year. You know, summer will spike
Sure.
up, because it always does.
yeah.
Because kids are out and about and just, so.
So, you know, it would be interesting to see the data for the school year component, whatever that, you know, whatever that looks like. And then the summer data, and just see, because then what can we do differently in the summer?
I mean, summer's a rough time, because that's when kids are at work,
Yeah.
adults at work.
Yeah, too much time.
And I think the things that you can do to not be bored, they cost money, and I'm not judging. They, you know, programs need to have money to run, but there's not a whole lot of super free programming, and if there is, having my own lived experience with this, it's not super convenient if you have a job and you have to get your kids to and from that place. So, because it's not all day, it's not the same hours that you work. So, so I think that's you know, it should just be interesting to see if there's other things that we can pitch to city council down the line, or if Danielle, when she returns, has thoughts on different things from NCSS's perspective. I don't know, is there anything from your work that you see, Chris, that?
You know, we don't really, I mean, we've been partnering with Spectrum a lot, so we're really doing a lot more programming with that that age group.
Yeah, I think they're doing a great
And
job.
Yeah.
they're doing a really
But
good
those are
job.
kids that
And
want to go there too.
yeah, and we have a mutual grant, so we're kind of working together and doing some new programming.
And they're not open at night, right? Like
They're not, I mean, their hours are their
Yeah.
hours, and, yeah, it would be nice to expand.
I think
We've
their
done
goal is to
nighttime
expand.
events there.
Huh?
I think their goal is to expand.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I
But
heard.
it's the same thing.
But it's
There's
a money
funding,
issue.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But you see, one primary point that, I'm looking at is that at that age group, people do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, also true. Yeah.
Correct. It's not
It's
new. I mean, it's definitely not new.
Yeah.
And so, and this is just like in the future, something that we should be looking at is that, especially when it comes to like services, like the DH, Department of Welfare, whatever, and the Medicare and all of that, I believe if someone commits offense in that age group, there should be a forgiveness program when they become an adult, a real adult, like in the 40s. And then the stupid stuff is affecting them and they really need the service now in their 40s.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that a lot more and I'm like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
and then they fall through the crack because now they fall to something and because of the stupid stuff era, no benefits now that they need. And they're homeless.
So I'd be curious.
Huh?
I've been looking at this,
Mhm.
and I'm like, wow, what kind of services they're providing with helping youth make better decisions, because,
If they go along with it, yes.
yeah,
They offer it, yes.
man, I mean, exactly, if they go along with it. I mean, I'm looking at like, teaching them how to use their prefrontal cortex. I'm like, wow, that's like,
They offer it a lot.
this is a really good program, and I appreciate the fact that we have that in the community because it's still a resource, even, and I think that if this was more accessible,
Right.
then we can help prevent the crimes that are happening. So somehow we can have a way to have that type of stuff, those resources more accessible to the youth. It'll help a lot.
Well, that's a big step. So, like Lieutenant Tyler, we've been trying to get this direct referral to them since my whole career, 25 years now.
Wow.
The old state attorney was dead against it. And I'm not saying anything bad against Mr. Hughes, because he was a really good state attorney, but for whatever reason, he wanted control of the cases. And I think he was more historically did it because he wanted to see if it was the same offender he wanted to keep in the courtroom. Where as soon as John Lavoie got put in place, he's like, I'm done. No, I want to go direct. So he made that change immediately. So that's a big bonus for us. And this should streamline all those juvenile cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been the case with
So,
even pretrial services.
By the way, I had to sign it.
As it,
Yeah.
Because he was all for it. I just think as we all know, there's other things going on, so.
Sure. Yeah.
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 In this area though, I think not just with the youth, but with adults as well too. Like I know for us, being, the designated agency for substance use in this community, we've seen the increases from pretrial services regularly now, huge increase, and that's something that I know I've been wanting to see happen for a long time too. So that's been a huge plus that, since having just a different perspective on that and seeing the value of it, we get a ton of referrals. that
And
the
she
state's
is trying to
attorneys-
certainly worried about keep up the demand, which will be the next issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
But Winnie, you bring a good point that it's, that it's damning, right? Like
Yeah, the stupid stuff.
Stupid stuff. Let's be honest, you can make stupid decisions until you're 25. Your prefrontal
Because
cortex
your
is still
brain is
not all
fully
there.
functioning, yes.
Thank God there weren't cell phones when I was in
I have
college.
3 kids.
Because I would not be sitting here, I'm pretty sure. So I do think that, the things that can happen before somebody gets pigeonholed into the system, which isn't to say that there aren't people who are just gonna go in the system, because that is, you can do all the things and that still might be the end of that might be the end game. But if you can avoid the person who could have turned right and kept going right by offering new things, I think that's great. Go ahead. I'm so sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we work closely with restorative justice. In fact, I'm on the board. But one of the things that's happening this year is that, historically there has been laws in place that restorative justice cannot accept domestic violence cases. However, that So there's by statute. So we kind of rallied around, and they developed a policy, and it was passed. So starting in, well, it's probably going to be a year out because there's a lot of planning that has to happen to make sure that it's done well. And that there are resources in place to do it. So one of the things that we'll be working closely with, we'll be partnering with restorative justice on that piece. And so we'll see how it goes. But we have to have an MOU. What's nice is that we'll be able to design our own process here locally. So it's not going to be a statewide thing. So I'm really looking forward to that because we know that survivors, victims don't always get what they need in the criminal justice process. So this is another area of restorative justice process that, they may feel that they, it's another avenue, it's another process that they can find closure if they want. So they have to be totally on board, obviously, for that to happen. But, so I'm looking forward to that.
That's great.
So
that's a big change.
I'd really like to continue monitoring this data and also hearing from the folks at Restorative Justice, Danielle, who's not able to be with us tonight, but who will return next time, and just, really think about what do we want to say to City Council, right? Because I'm sure they've heard it all before, but how are we interfacing it with our work to say, this is the outcome for everybody, right? It isn't just a good idea because one person thinks it's a good idea. Like these are the outcomes and this is how it benefits everybody. And from our perspective, this is how it helps us achieve our mission, which is their mission, right? And as we move into the next phase where we will, this committee will look a little different. Coverage area for SAPD will look a little different. The budget will look a little different. How do we carry this forward into that realistically by saying this is where we think you need to continue to focus your energies as a joint leadership team, as a city council leadership team, and this is where we need your help if we really want to see the change that we've talked about, which is trying to limit the number of difficult interactions once somebody has crossed that line into breaking a law and getting police to be called to the scene, right? Like that's really what our goal has been all along. So
And that is why I was suggesting that and the student, I should probably have a better lingo to say, but at that age group that restorative justice is covering is when you make a lot of decisions that when you're older you look back, you be like, huh.
yeah.
So between that, I'm saying that if we could have a forgiveness program, that we now view this person as an adult, they already spent, like I'm dealing with someone and I'm not no bash name or anything, that went to jail, spent 15 years in jail, and the stuff that they did when they were young, now that 49 years old is affecting their lives today. So I'm saying in between this gap of the person already served their time and they're out, can we, the police department and all these different agencies that are so collaborating together, come up with a forgiveness plan? Now you're back into society, you want to be a productive person in society, and this forgiveness program will, if you do this.
There are expungement clinics, and a lot of it comes because as I'm hearing you too, my work brain is like, I want to learn everything about the individual. What were the charges?
Right.
What did the person do for rehabilitation in facility when they came out? Because there are different options for individuals, and even if they can't get their charges expunged, there's very rare scenarios that I've heard of a person not being accepted to get services.
Right.
There is one that I get frustrated with, that people who are on the sex offender registry in need of residential treatment, it's still like case by case jumping through hoops to help get them into a Vermont treatment program. If they have an arson charge or sex offender registry, it has been done. We've been able to do it for some of the, but those are the only two things that I can think of that a person would be denied for.
Well, this person had welfare check and whatever, received services in the stupid stuff age group and was
like social security?
Yeah, social security and
Oh, I see, so that might just
welfare.
be new applications.
Right, and so now when they apply for new application, then the stupid stuff error comes up and then they can get no service.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, it seems like the wrong
There's definitely some.
Yeah, the right
things
service provider
that,
could
you
maybe
know,
get
need to
diagnosed.
be
maybe-
looked at, you know.
But it's the ladies I work with, they're the people that are paying for the person to get into the rehab or whatever.
Is there someone who can speak to, because I'm familiar with expungement clinics as well, through.
I know there's one, I saw a notice again, the Restorative Justice
forgot
Center
about this.
advertises it regularly when it comes
Yeah.
to the
Okay.
area, so I can ask, I feel like I just saw a notice not that long ago.
So maybe then it's following up with Harmony and just
Yeah, I'll shoot
seeing
her
if she
an
can
email
provide
to
us with
see.
some more information about what that looks like.
They have a program tomorrow night from 4:30 to 6:30 for people exactly like this at their office in Burlington. Well, of course, that's Chittenden County, so.
What office, the restorative justice program?
No, this is from Vermont Legal Aid.
Oh, legal.
They have a
yeah.
clinic and that is some of what they're gonna
That's
address.
what they do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow from 4:30 to 6:30.
Okay.
So if we could get a clinic like that here,
Yeah.
we
Yep.
could help some of our people here as
I
well.
know that they have had clinics here.
Oh, yeah,
But I
we've
haven't heard
sent,
of
they
any
have
recently.
over the years, yeah, because
Yeah.
we've sent a number of
Yeah,
patients to
yeah,
them.
exactly.
It's just not as often as it ought to be.
Right, I
Exactly.
haven't heard anything recently.
Yeah.
Remember
no,
dealing with
that's
post-COVID, which.
all just legal
So
Well,
I've tried since COVID, yeah, all that stuff went away.
If attorneys'
Yeah, we-
offices can do them pro bono.
We used to have Jess Radford too, she was, when she
Yeah.
was with Vermont Legal Aid, she kept us up to
She's
speed
gone.
on all of that, but she moved to New York.
I know, there was a lot of sadness when we were staying there.
Absolutely, she was a
All
dynamo.
right,
She
well,
is a dynamo.
lots of good conversation, I think lots of good continued conversation to have, so we'll keep this one on our agenda. With that, Chief, you're up again. We just wanted to look at quarterly internal affairs
Yep.
data, just something that we want to continue to look at on the quarterly. Nothing extraordinary has happened, at least
No.
hopefully not.
I know about, so for the first quarter, January 1st through March 31st, we had 9 IAs. Do you want me to just give a synopsis of each of them, or do you want me to do it? Or do you want me to just break it, how do you want me to do it?
What, does the committee have a preference here? Would you like a synopsis on each one,
So,
or just?
I can just give you how they were, you tell me, I don't care.
I know one of your officers was in the news
So
lately.
I can tell you, so there's 9 of them.
Okay.
4 of them were one officer who no longer works for us. Not that that's related, but that's just,
Yep,
it is what it
Okay.
is, so. They were, of the 9, 5 were externally generated, which means they came from outside the department, 4 were from inside the department. I go right down. The first one was, first 2 were officers being rude on the phone. Both times the officers were exonerated after listening to the audio recordings. The third one was a landlord-tenant situation. Officer gave inaccurate information that was substantiated. Fourth one was officer didn't take proper actions on domestic assault. A sergeant jumped in and helped handle the situation as a newer officer, so that was taken care of, that was substantiated. Fifth one, officer didn't respond to a theft, didn't do enough follow through, that was substantiated. The sixth one, officer was a stabbing incident, person was stabbed, the officer didn't properly take care of the scene, that's substantiated. These are all the one that involves the same person. The sixth one, allegation the officer didn't properly search the person following a separate stabbing incident. This was not substantiated, that didn't happen the way they said. Traffic stop without cause, that was not, the officer was exonerated, that didn't happen that way. They had reason to stop the car. And the last one was not tagging body worn camera footage, and that's handled at supervisor level. That's it.
One of your officers in the news lately, Cunningham or
A
some.
lot of what?
The one of your officers was in the news lately, was
On mine?
on the news, or probably on Facebook, I saw it, where traffic stop, the person felt that the officer was speaking to them very condescending.
oh, that
In the
was
news?
social, no,
Oh,
social media.
Yeah, we don't need,
Yes.
that's next quarter.
Yeah,
That's on next quarters.
Okay.
We did start a complaint on that, even though they never called us.
Okay.
yes, I did pass that
We
on.
took the
Yeah.
complaint from
Yeah.
the P.E.G side.
I think, at least I think
Okay.
you're hearing, talking about the same one that we were seeing together.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yep, I have that next quarter. We started a complaint, because we do for all of them, even though, like I said, we got this from you guys, and we pulled the video on that.
Yeah,
So I
okay.
have that next quarter.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. So, I'll just recap that really quickly so that folks know. People do reach out to us via social media, sometimes, and I'll be honest, I know I do this, I see it. If I see it on social media, my policy has been, since I've been the chair, and will continue to be, that I think you just gotta sometimes dive in with both hands, because we want people to have faith in the process. It's also my very firm belief that things can get blown up a lot on social media, and it's really important that someone says,
Put it mildly.
I want to raise this forward. I appreciate why you might not be comfortable raising this forward, but I'm going to raise this forward because I've seen it, because you put it out here, so I'm going to do it. I appreciate your willingness to speak, because I do want people to feel safe and like there's follow-up. So I don't know I know who the person is. I'm not going to say their information here, but I don't know that they'll watch this, but I'll be glad to reach back out to them and say, hey, this is sort of the outcome of you sharing your story, and it's information that we're consistently looking at this level, which is the goal of this, right? Like, we wanted people to feel like this is transparent. We don't want people to feel like they say things and then it's swept under a rug somewhere, because that's not what's happening. So thank you, Chief, for escalating that. And folks, I want you to feel safe to reach out to SAPD directly through the channels that they have, because I think you can, but appreciate that there's reasons for lots of people why that might not work.
Yeah.
And you might not feel safe. That has nothing to do with anyone sitting at this table. That is just a fact of years and years and years and years of challenges and trust. And abuses of power that people have experienced in this community or another community. So I do hope people will continue to use that venue, but that is how that happens. So any public that watch this after, if you do that and I respond, know that I'm escalating it forward to Chief.
Right, like when something happened to BFA in Fairfax, and on Facebook you read, there's a lot of stuff happening in Fairfax and St. Albans. No, this BFA and St. Albans police is nowhere around. And I politely tagged, if it was St. Albans on Main Street, the St. Albans police would have been there already. And then come to find out it was in Fairfax.
Different community.
Yeah.
But I was glad that I was able to, clear that up right away.
And that's what I would say to anyone
Confused.
on this community. We all have different levels of how we want to engage on social media, so
Yeah.
it's not by any means an ask, but if you see that sort of thing happening, do feel free to engage. I think that's our role. Obviously you don't speak for the St. Albans Police Department, you speak for the Police Advisory Board, but
you just clear up the atmosphere right away.
yeah, exactly, right, that's exactly.
Especially when it's facts, it's not
Yeah,
an opinion or a judgment.
Oh,
it's
that is,
facts.
of course, they
They don't
start
serve
rapping in
Fairfax.
that, and I'm like, no.
And then it just takes a life of its own.
Yeah.
Yes,
I was like, no.
And we are going to look at this internal affairs data quarterly, and just to clarify, if you weren't able to be here when Chief did a great rundown for us on internal affairs, that's what it's called. Anytime there's a complaint and an investigation is launched, it's not all like Law and Order.
Lieutenant Kuchar is set come in June, by the way.
Yes,
And
thank
he'll
you.
explain the
Excellent.
system, must carry them, because he does the actual.
Okay.
Who?
Lieutenant Ben Kuchar, he does the investigations.
Yes, we will have him for June. That's great. And I was very grateful that Lieutenant Talley was able to be here tonight, and hopefully other officers will continue to join us because it's great to have folks here. One last question I have, compared to last year, how does that data look?
I should have pulled the yearly, but I don't know. I'm gonna suggest it's about the same.
Okay,
I don't know, if I remember correctly, I guess I should have pulled last year's, what did we have last year? I think we had 30 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think we had 10 internal and 20 that, right, or vice versa, but, so we're probably there about the same, I'm guessing.
Okay.
We should drop down, but based on who we have and who we don't have, but then again, we're getting a lot of officers this year, so.
yeah.
I don't, I can't predict it, I don't know.
No, and I don't think you ever.
I have no way to, no.
But I think it's still working, right? It's
Yeah.
not like sometimes you see a little surge where everybody reports and then it goes quiet, but it sounds like it's still working and
Yeah.
people are
There's
reporting.
a lot of officers coming, so they're gonna have to learn our way of doing
Yeah.
things, so that could potentially bring more policy violations, I don't know.
And I
How
think,
many new officers you have?
So one started last week, one starts this Friday, one starts 3 weeks after that, and one's going to the academy in August. So at least 4 in the next
That's
4
great.
months,
That's good.
so.
and I think, you know, the
Just
person that's no
vacancies?
longer there,
That puts us above vacancy level.
Oh.
We're starting to build for the town.
good. That's great news, because I know that a lot of work went into that. So the person that's no longer with us, I think that's the evidence that the system works as intended,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not suggesting that's why they aren't, I'm just saying they
Yeah.
first, so.
But that should be the goal of this, is not necessarily to assume that somebody isn't a good fit or it doesn't, that there's a major problem, but rather it's a system and we have to be able to trust in it, so. All right, so the last agenda item, I know we're a little behind the clock, but I'm gonna keep us pushing as fast as I can here. Something else that popped up on social media, and I see these two from time to time, like a general, hey, there was this happened in my neighborhood, and I think, maybe I don't live in the right neighborhood to get services from the police. I live in that neighborhood too, and I don't necessarily feel that way, but that's somebody's perception and that's real. So just that there was some sort of event, and I actually think the road was blocked for some period of time, and then the feeling was that then there was maybe a crime, but that nothing happened, no follow-up. And so I know we've talked just on a high level, it's not about that specific case by any means, but just when you're called to a scene, when you assist in a scene, what generates a follow-up, what doesn't generate follow-up? Like, how does that work? Why would a
Follow up to
community-
who?
So, well, I think that's maybe part of the question, right? So when
So
you're,
it's like public notice, or newsworthy,
or, just if I call police on someone and then you show up and that person quietly goes back into their house as though nothing
Gotcha.
happened. Yeah,
So-
what is that?
Generally speaking, a bunch of layers to that. So if somebody calls in a third-party complaint and says, hey, my neighbor down the road is doing this, and they're not a victim, we generally don't call over them unless we need a statement. And a lot of times because they don't really want to be that involved, our experience is they don't want to be that involved or be known as the one that called, and we want the person to be called. So we will not follow up with them at all unless there's a reason to look for a statement. If they're a victim, we always have to follow up with them, we need their statement. If it's a major scene, like we're closing the road like we just had on Hoyt Street the other day, we often put out a press release like I did on that one, but we don't do it very often because I'm not in the belief that we need to shame anybody for arresting them. I don't think that really helps anything. Where we used to be, the department used to be very heavy into media releases for every arrest.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
do that. I put maybe 10 out.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
And I really don't think it does much. But on the other hand, I understand what you're asking, I think, is that, if you see something happening, should the neighborhood be told, or should neighborhood, we don't do that unless there's a reason to. Again, because a lot of times, time comes into it, to be honest with you. The other thing is, experience tells me that if you call on a neighbor, just using that as an example,
Yeah.
now they know we went to their house, and all of a sudden we go back to your house, and they're pissed off that we were at their house to begin with, or what they may or may not have been doing, that may end up being troublesome for you.
Yep.
And that is a big deal.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Quite
Okay.
honestly, that's how it goes. So I do understand people, we'll get the call, a lot of people like, hey, you were just 3 houses down, what the hell's going on? And our answer will be, it's not a safety concern, don't worry about it. Because then we can't violate your neighbors, right? We went to their house, if it's not a safety concern, we have really no right telling why we were at the house. It could have been a welfare check, could have been a mental health issue.
Right.
We could still have 6 cruises there for a mental health issue because the threat could have been somebody with a firearm, but we have no reason to tell somebody else that. If there's not a safety issue, we shouldn't be telling the neighborhood that. So there's a mental health issue per se,
And I think there was maybe also a belief that, or just a general belief, not in that particular case, but just that there's frequent flyers, right?
Yes,
and
there are houses we visit a lot.
Yes, and then the feeling that because you're continuing to
Yeah.
visit, nothing
Yeah.
has actually happened.
Yes, that is an absolute, you're absolutely right,
Not
that, we get those calls a lot too.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of times where they're nuisance type calls. It doesn't mean we haven't made arrests over there. Just because somebody doesn't go out in handcuffs doesn't mean they haven't been arrested with citation. It doesn't mean we haven't quelled the problem, and it doesn't mean we would love to do more and we can't because we don't have a person come forward and give us a sworn statement. And I understand all of that. And a lot of times, we push back and say, hey, we'll have that person that calls us today, I've seen you at this house 6 times. I could just use this example. I know that you don't have a ton of drugs out there, why aren't you doing something? Like, give us a sworn statement. We go there, there's nothing, they're just not on the table.
Yeah.
Give us a statement, everybody's answer is, I'm not doing that because I don't want to be that person.
Right.
And I understand that, I'm not,
Right.
so our hands are often tied, and I understand the reasons why, and I'm not giving anybody a hard time for that, but we do often go, I can give you 10 houses off the top of my head right now, the address, if we go there so often. And it often looks that way, and oftentimes it is that way. We go, we quell the problem, we leave. And there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and we know that.
Right.
We're building that what you know and what you can prove is, as much as that sounds like a TV line, that is a line.
Yeah.
That is the truth
Understand that.
behind it.
And
That's
so
the best way to.
as a community member, if I feel like that's happening, I can call.
Absolutely.
And
The
ask.
more we document something, still the better.
Yeah.
And that way, when we do end up with, I'm using drugs as an example here, the more we want to get in this house, the more community set keeps pointing the finger at that house, the more likely it is that we're going to get a warrant on that house at some point.
Okay.
Right, if they don't call, it's not documented, so
That's
it
It
didn't
didn't
happen.
happen, right?
Right.
We can't, if we don't document it, that you called on this date, this time, this date, and that multiple times, it didn't happen. So, you can't say, well, last week, okay.
Yeah.
Now's when you get information.
Yeah.
Warrants are very timely. Like 6 to 10 days, you're really pushing it. 2 to 3 days is great.
Yeah.
The judges, they're always tell you how timely this information is very relevant. So, for those examples.
Okay.
So,
So I think that, a couple key takeaways. One, if you're accustomed, which I remember the shaming days, to there being, a press release every time there's an arrest.
That's
That's
so, yeah.
not a practice necessarily that's happening the same way that it was. That does not mean that those.
we're still making a lot of arrests.
Yeah, that does not mean.
Just because it's not.
Because an arrest is not a
Yes.
conviction, right?
Yeah.
It's not a conviction, and that's part of the problem. We've had multiple people call me and say, my case was dropped, my case was whatever it was, and I can't get a job because people Google my name. And
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. So
Yeah.
that is what
Yeah.
it is. Well, even if they're extremists, even if they're guilty and they're still got off on a technicality, it doesn't matter. They were still not found guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah.
But their name, as soon as you Google them, what's the first thing you see is that arrest.
St. Albans
And we
police
are an
arrested.
innocent until proven guilty
Right.
country,
Right.
so
Right.
that is, Vermont is not different than.
So I do very few questions.
Yeah, and I think that that's given what our mission is as a committee, I think that's a practice that I wholeheartedly
Yes.
Sure
support.
doesn't dawn.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it really backfires.
The only time we do is if there's if we have 15 officers and we bring in state police, so
Sure.
there's multiple agents, I get calls. They actually call me, the press does. I have to,
Yeah,
Right.
if I don't put something out, they're gonna put something out.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
And it's
is
gonna
the
be twisted
Yeah.
to some way that it's.
And there's likely-
Not always, but I'm better off to put something out. They're gonna talk to neighbors that really don't know what happened, and I'm better off to put something out.
right.
So,
That's
So
true.
that's wise.
That's true.
just because we don't necessarily see folks getting, taken away in handcuffs doesn't mean that activity isn't happening.
absolutely not.
Continue to report if you're having that situation and you're feeling like the response may not be what you're expecting. And I know this from healthcare, we all have expectations because we watch TV or we've done Google MD before we rolled in. So we expect that because I have a headache, I'm gonna get an MRI and we're gonna rule out a stroke, and likely you're gonna get an aspirin and go home, right? And that's not gonna be the experience that you expected when you rolled in with your headache. So it's the same sort of thing, right? Like, because we're expecting something to happen doesn't mean that that is what's going to happen. But continue to call. Your calls are not nuisances, and you're not being disregarded, based on.
And if that is the case, I need to know about it.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying, things are always done perfectly. I'd be lying to you if I thought that. This is the real
Yeah.
world, so come on.
Yeah, so, continue to share your concerns whatever way that you can, but, the whole city is the purview of SAPD, and I'm confident that the whole city is managed the same way, whatever your address or tax bracket might be, so. But I appreciate the individual who was willing to speak their truth
Right.
forward and share their concerns so that we could have that conversation today, so thank you to the community, and keep calling and keep letting us know what's going on.
But I just got a question, Chief, and what about people that maliciously would call for a welfare check on someone just because?
So those are interesting, right? We do get a lot of welfare checks, right? As you go, I think I've talked about that. And we get them every day. We get a welfare check, at least one from the extreme, right? my person with me right now is going to harm themselves right in front of me, to the person that says, I live in Rhode Island, and I think this person's gonna harm themselves. You know, we get those out-of-state calls going up. But then you also get the one that's, they're an ex, or they used to be even just a friend, and they could be considered, they could be doing it on a harassment level, right?
Right.
So there are those things, but the problem is the onus is on us now, when somebody calls a welfare check, to decide, do we still, if they use the right verbiage, we're in a hard spot to not check on that person.
Right.
Then it doesn't mean we can't still deal with the other person. If we go there personally, look, this is the third time you've been here, I have no interest in hurting myself, or whatever the case may be, they're saying. Then we may be able to look at the other person for some type of harassment, but depending on the verbiage they use, you still gotta make sure the welfare of that person that they called in on is in fact okay, unless you've proven it, you've got a track record now, but otherwise, if it's a first time call, it's gonna be hard.
What about the ones that do it anonymously?
We do get those, it's pretty rare, but you do get those too. People do a lot of things when they're technically harassing people, right? They'll do a lot of things, so, but that welfare check is a very easy way to check on the whereabouts of somebody. And, we won't really, they usually know whereabouts, but sometimes we'll get those too, like, I don't know where they're living, but we have this person that's calling me from the cell phone saying they're harming themselves. We get those calls.
Yeah.
We won't tell them where we find them if we do find them, but people do a lot of things, but welfare checks and big one.
Well,
Yeah.
plus
It's
those
one
are
of
right,
those
those are
dangerous things
serious,
to do.
right? Like that's one thing that those are the most serious
Yeah.
calls you can get,
Yeah.
because that's one thing you don't wanna make a bad judgment call and say,
Correct.
oh, I think they're just
No.
harassing me, don't
Correct.
show up, and then something,
They're
yeah, so
dangerous.
it's
they're
not fair to
risky,
put it on
they're
law
time
enforcement to
consuming.
make
Right.
that call.
Right. So it's
But
that
you're right.
balance.
It's a balance, but you can. We definitely have seen the ones that cross the line. Like somebody's not calling us because they care about the welfare of you. They're calling us because they're trying to find out what you're doing or what you're doing.
Yeah.
Either way.
Stalking.
It's like stalking. That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the easy answer is I just
Yeah.
get a stalking order, then you can take care of that. But
Yeah.
people are pretty ingenious when they're trying to
Remember
contact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you do what you gotta do. Except for maybe not do that.
I know,
Jeez,
right?
bro. I mean, I've called enough welfare checks over my career based on what my former line of work is like. I mean, it's a big deal to think about whether or not you're gonna do it sometimes, right? Is it the right thing
Not
to
for
do? not for everybody. Apparently
No,
not
it is
everybody
hard.
uses
It
the
is hard.
rubric that I did, but at the end of the day, I almost would always err on the side of caution call, and if it's not a big deal, then it's not a big deal. Better than finding out that it was a big deal, right? And be wrong. So
And thanks to doorbell, you could actually talk to the cops
Yes.
via the doorbell.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine. I just got a cold. I'm
I
joking.
just got a cold, and I didn't stop and talk to Bonnie, and now she's upset. Okay, sorry if there's anybody named Bonnie. Stop and frisk, stop and identify. So
Yep, I can get into those real quick.
okay.
So that's two different things, so we're all clear on that.
Yes.
So the frisk is a pat down, right? Is the same thing. A frisk and a pat down are used to detect weapons on the outside of somebody's clothing. Doesn't mean going inside their shirt or anything else. So what gave police officers the authority to do that is called a Terry stop. It's
Right.
Terry so out in 1968 roughly. So every officer has the ability to do that, but you can't just do that. It has to be based on this reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed, about to be committed, or just was committed. That's the only time you can use that. So it doesn't mean I just walk up to you right now and say, I want to search you outside your pockets. So that's what the Terry stop, pat down, frisk is. The necessity to identify, that is, in Vermont, that is a law. But, again, that doesn't mean I can walk down, the police can walk down the street and say, hey, what's your name? We can ask you that. You don't have to tell us. On a car stop, if you're a driver, you have to identify yourself as Vermont. If you don't, you're going to come with us until you do. It's not a crime. You're going to go in front of a judge, and if you don't tell them, you're going to go to jail until you identify yourself.
Okay.
You can do that for a speeding, or for a traffic stop if you're the driver. I've had many passengers tell me no.
Right.
Many passengers tell me I'm not gonna tell you. Okay, whatever, can't do anything about that. That's for car stops, both municipal ordinance and traffic tickets. So that's the simplest way to explain that. So you do have to identify yourself, if it's for a crime.
What's the difference between a
Municipal ordinance and ticket.
yeah?
So, where the money goes? So if you get stopped in St. Albans City here for running a stop sign, you can write it under a traffic ticket, which means money goes to the state of Vermont. You can write it under a municipal ordinance, which usually goes back to the city. So we, being City PD, should write it under municipal ordinance. It's the same, it's the same
Okay.
fine, it's just the money is directed to a different fund.
Okay.
But ordinances also, in the city, like I came from the state police, we didn't ever write ordinances. When I came here, I got a crash course of ordinances. I still haven't written one, but I guess I could. Ordinance here also, let's see, riding skateboarding down the sidewalk. That's technically an ordinance. The new noise ordinance we just enacted,
Yep.
that's ordinance. So
Okay.
there are ordinances that each municipality has. They can adopt their own ordinances per the city council or town select board.
And those
So
would
we have
drive.
a ton of ordinances that city has. Those you have to identify yourself.
Okay.
Per the state law.
And does the state law require that the officer ask, or does it just give you?
Yeah, because you can't write it's a piece of
Okay.
paper, so you can't write it out
Got
by the name.
Okay.
Now, every person do not have a valid state ID or
So,
driver's license.
That happens a lot. I haven't written tickets till they came here, right? Because that's not really my time or what I should be spending time. When I was state police, I wrote a lot of tickets. I stopped a ton of people that didn't have any ID. This is what it is. There's a way, as long as you can explain who you are, and most people, there's some identifying way, whether it's a social security number or something, they have something, we'll find out who you are. I have never taken somebody in custody for not telling me who they were, they all proved on the side of the road. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, somewhere I'm sure it has, but I've had people lie me up and down on who they are. But it's very easy to disprove that side. It's usually you're usually pretty able to tell if somebody's telling you the truth, because you'll ask them more than one question, you're like, give me a name, get a date of birth. That doesn't come back in the system, then you start asking other questions, and usually they'll jam themselves up. But you don't have to. By law, you're supposed to have your valid ID with you. I can tell you from my experience that a lot of people don't have their valid ID with them when they're driving. Not the majority, but some people don't. There's ways around that. But I have seen troopers take people in custody that flat out refuse. Not, we're lying, just flat out, I'm not giving you an ID. Those people who usually didn't do that for a reason.
Identifying yourself and having a valid ID are two different things.
Two very
is what I'm
different
hearing.
things. Two very
Okay.
different things. There's a ticket for not having your ID. Because you're, by law, required to carry an ID if you're driving your vehicle. Not talking walking down the street,
Yes.
you're talking driving your vehicle.
Yeah.
It's a ticket. I believe it's no point even, but it's a ticket.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I believe it's to identify you in the event that something bad happens
Sure.
as well. If you're now the casualty in a motor vehicle crash, it'd be nice for us to know who you were.
Yeah.
Rather than trying, because I've been in that position more than I care to remember, trying to figure out, is this in fact the person we are dealing with in this car?
Yeah.
That's not a good place to do. You're calling family members now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, for the no ID, because, ID is hard to get
Yeah.
by this day when someone is trying to
Right.
restart their lives.
It is. You can get non-driver IDs though. Fairly
Even
easy.
to that is a problem now.
Yeah,
right?
yes, it could be something.
It
I'm
is a problem.
Yeah.
You don't have
But
a
the-
physical
the-
address.
the
Still
pat
costs
down-
money.
We work with quite a few that.
Yeah.
The pat down real quick, so
We
pat
pay for a lot
downs,
of those.
Huh?
We help people
Yeah.
get-
the pat downs in the state of Vermont, because I used to teach patrol procedures, I was one of the instructors on there. The way that is taught in the state of Vermont, or at least was from, I taught from like 2006 to 2014, was if you were gonna pat somebody down, like Terry stop, we still ask permission to do that. Hey, is it alright if I pat you down for weapons for my safety and your safety? That was the verbiage we used. And you had to wait till they responded. It wasn't one of those, hey, can I pat you down while you're doing it? That was the way we taught it. If somebody said no, you can't, don't touch me. And you didn't have an articulate suspicion and there was, that you could make space for yourself and get some distance, that we left it at that. So, again, if you're arresting somebody, it's totally different. You have every right you're gonna thoroughly search them if you're arrested. But if it's just reasonable suspicion, you're talking to them about, someone just smashed the window next door, they came running through here, you stopped them, but you didn't know for sure they did, and you just want, you kind of investigating still, that scenario, you would still ask to Terry stop them, to pat them down in Vermont, that's how it was taught.
And that is still,
I haven't taught there since 2014, I'm assuming that's still the way it was.
can
Yeah.
you research that for us? And
I can find out, well,
Yeah.
he would've been great when I asked, he's an instructor then.
Oh, well, he
Yeah,
left.
so-
Well, we can, but that sounds like you still have to have a reasonable suspicion.
You have to, without doubt, that's never gonna change. You have to
Okay.
have a reasonable suspicion to ask somebody, to pat somebody down, but even in this case, more than just, hey, how are you? You
Yeah.
have to have a reason, so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, somebody just keep right on walking,
And I really flipped these because reading, I guess, was a challenge for me tonight. But response and follow-up, we actually answered already. So the recent news concerns was kind of just for me, but I would encourage people to chime in, and I'll be quick. I know there's a lot happening. We've alluded to it earlier with local legislatures is making some moves against another local law enforcement member. Not affiliated with SAPD in any way, an elected official, as well as another elected official who's filling the state's attorney role. That's public knowledge. few people have reached out to me here or there, you know, to just sort of say, what does that mean? How does that impact your work? And it really doesn't, right? And that's, you know, it's not something that we shouldn't talk about here. It's not really within our scope. It's happening. It's not going to impact Chief and his work. It's not going to impact, it might impact you at some point, but in terms of, you know, all of the press that might be happening around it, the investigation, that's all happening.
Yeah, but a lot
not
of people
clear.
still don't know the difference. Because you read on Facebook, oh, Mo finally is in front, getting impeached. And I'm like, no, he comes in Albans.
Yeah.
This is the sheriff in the town.
Yes.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
So Chief can't be
Yeah.
impeached because he's
No, it's
not.
okay.
He can't. So Chief can't be impeached. He's not elected.
fired.
Much less ceremony.
People don't
I
understand.
mean, likely the legislature's
Yes.
not going to talk about it, but
That's
really
so funny.
truly, Chief is a city employee.
Right.
The individual that legislature is looking to
Is a-
impeach
This is sheriff.
is sheriff, and it's
And
the
that's
same
a town.
for the state's
And
attorney.
both of them are elected.
They're elected
officials.
Right.
officials, and so that's the
Very
those are
different process.
the work that the
Right,
legislature is doing. At this point, you know,
We suggest you read the article.
but you know, it's important because for our community, they have the potential to interface with all three of those entities that
Right.
we just talked about.
Yeah.
So it really is important for people to know the difference, and I do know that in some press releases, in fact, I think I saw something today, I did not get a chance to dive into it because it popped up on my feed as I was leaving. There's Franklin County data around stops based on racial profiling. That is very different than the data
Yeah.
that you've shared here. So
Right.
it's the whole county, not SAPD. So it's really sheriff
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
and maybe VSP based stops. I don't know for sure. So it's just really important to understand that there are three different law
Yeah.
enforcement groups that work here for
Swan.
Swanton. Thank you.
No, okay. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, Franklin.
Swan PD.
Swanton PD.
Okay.
They're the only other town in Frank that has a PD. Yeah, thank you. So it's just really important to know that those groups all interface here. But you know, that's all going to happen, and other people are going to have those discussions. It's not going to be discussion that we're going to have here. So certainly, when you bring your concerns forward, you may see me say or hear me ask, "Is that an SAPD concern?"
Right.
It's not because I'm trying to brush it off or don't want to engage, but there's a lot of stuff happening and a lot of reasonable concern happening outside of this, and so it's important that we're focused on this group at SAPD, not the state's attorney's office and their work, and not the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. So just wanted to throw that out there because I know it pops up every once in a while, and then there's a little bit of crossover feedback and questions. And you know, we're looking forward to the point when SAPD does start working with the town, and then hopefully we'll be able to see a joint P.E.G. Where the two communities are coming together to do this work. So we're all excited about that as we continue to see that grow and evolve. But we still got a little time before all of that happens. So last but certainly not least, and then we'll get everybody out of here. I appreciate everybody sticking around. I think it's been a great meeting. So Chief, if you just want to tell us a little bit about a recent SAPD award that was given at a city council meeting.
So, real quick, our awards thing, we started, when I started here, I made an award policy and an award system, because we didn't have anything in place, so we've only given out 3 awards since I've been here, so the individual that got that award was given that for the incident that happened at St. Albans City School like a month and a half ago now. She was a bus driver that was working that day when she saw this incident unfolding. She acted, I think, both heroically and very, very decisively to, I think, protect the children that were in place that day that were in danger of this car. So the way it works for us is if somebody, any of our officers are involved in the case and they believe that somebody acted in a way that isn't deserving of an award, whether it's an officer or a citizen, they propose it to the awards committee, which is made up of 4 people. They look at it, they take the report and they look at video if there is such video, and there was all kinds of video for this one from the school, and they determine if this award is worthy, and if it is, they write it up and they get ready to present it. In this case, Lieutenant Weatherby presented it because he was the one that was on the committee and also was the one that did all the work. And we presented it to her in front of City Council. And she was given a civilian award. So basically, a civilian award is an award shall be presented to a non-sworn individual, i.e. citizens or employees, whose actions result in the apprehension of criminals, life-saving, or assisting the Department of Combating Crime. Citizen citations may be processed by either the sworn awards committee or non-sworn awards committee, and along with certificate of commendations. And that's what she got. So I think she was very pleased, her family was pleased, City Council did a great job that night supporting it. It was well received.
Well, and as someone who has littles at the place where it happened, I am grateful, although my little wasn't impacted. Could have been. So it's great when citizens respond in those kinds of crisis situations and then get recognized for it.
Yeah, she was great. She was very pleased to get it. She was surprised. She wasn't expecting it, and so it worked out good.
Which makes it even better.
Very good.
So, and that's great that we have. I didn't even know we had that program. And so
Yeah, we started
came
at
up, so
20. So there's like 7 different awards you can get. Like I said, we've given out a few of them, and the last 2 have also involved citizens as well. So
that's great. So we will work to keep the group posted so that if we can attend those when they happen at City Council, just to support SAPD and the community. That's great. This one happened very quickly, so it is what it is, but we'll try to do better next time. There is one so that we can get there.
She was presented that in front of her child too, right?
she brought her family, yeah.
Yeah,
She
so
wanted
her
it
family-
before school got out, and it was going to be very close to if we wait till June, it was very close to the last day of school, especially for the young ones. So,
Yeah. That was kind of powerful because I did watch it. I couldn't make it that night, but watch it after the fact, and it was powerful to see
But we only
Mom
had
get
4
this
days.
award
from
and
there.
her little
It was
there
close.
cheering her on.
Yeah, that's
That was very
great.
cute.
Any questions on the award process? Any other comments on that? Okay, really quickly, anybody from the public, any public comment on tonight's meeting? Anything we missed?
No.
Thank you, Jen, for joining us, as always. Glad to see you. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Winnie's ready. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, enjoy the beautiful weather. Thank you all so much.